Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IOTA and Shimmer Community Governance meeting on Thursday, the 10th of August. Happy to have you all back here. And even if it's summer, some people find still their way into here. Even I don't know, Werner, is it kind of it's worth to go to the lake or to the swimming pool instead of because I hear it's quite shitty weather in Germany, huh? In the moment.
It's getting better now,
Good, good,
and
good, good,
up
good,
to 28 degrees Celsius
good, good, good.
tomorrow and on the weekend.
Yeah. So
So
still,
finally,
yeah.
summer has arrived here.
Okay, good. So still a good reason to join the governance call here. As always, we have important things to discuss. And I think the main thing we'll like to talk today is JD has kind of merged the two ideas and versions of the specification for the Treasury Committee together. I mean, he was doing a version with the lessons learned from the committee, and I did a little separate version of kind of updating or integrating the IOTA, the upcoming IOTA community treasury into the thing. And I think actually JD did a great job in basically putting those two things together and smoothing things out. And maybe, I don't know, it makes sense, JD, if we just go through. I did leave a couple of comments in the doc. Um, but maybe that's a good way of just going through. Maybe where I put my comments, we can discuss that. I can give some opinions on
Sure.
it. Maybe that's cool. Should I just share my screen?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Where is it? This one? Yeah. And I'll make that bigger. Okay, and I'll have to scroll up. Okay. So this is basically the current. So the current community grant committee, for those of you that watch or that haven't, that are a little bit new, the current Shimmer community grant committee is operating already under a specification that we have confirmed through the governance vote in March. And that was the specification that we all together designed here in the governance meetings over the last, I don't know, over the 6 or 8 months before the vote was. But now we figured out that we have found some points to improve the current specification based on the learnings and the knowledge that the current committee has gathered over its, I don't know how many months now, 8 months of operation. No, 4 months. 4 months. And so we thought about it's good time to basically update, include some new things, make some things easier, make some things better. And the other point was that as we are approaching some technical updates, there will be a point in time where also the IOTA treasury tokens, those ones, the long-awaited treasury, basically the initial treasury, because of what we all started this whole governance thing, will finally become available to the IOTA community. And basically, our idea is to propose to the IOTA community to put these or put some assets from this 54 Ti, nearly 55 Ti IOTA tokens directly under the management of the current existing grant committee. Because in my opinion, they have shown that they know what to do. They're doing a good job. They are very, very transparent and obviously pretty good in the decision making. And even if it's a small treasury and we have problems not getting USDT and all the things, so for given the current conditions, it works really, really well. And I think they have now gained also a lot of experience in reviewing grant proposals. How many did you have? I think over 40 proposals already, JD, or?
I think we're up to 55 now.
Yeah,
We just got two
cool.
more.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot. So basically, minimum every reviewer has worked likely on more than 10 and most of
Oh, yeah.
them together. So it's a nice way of knowledge building. And so I think the real thing and only thing that makes sense is to give them also some of the upcoming IOTA treasury tokens so that they can work and handle this on behalf of the IOTA community and make good decisions with those funds to grow also the IOTA ecosystem. And so basically what we need for this is kind of a unified and combined specification framework that includes the learnings from the current committee and that covers um, both treasuries, both funding sources, and potentially both communities. So it should represent the will of both communities. It should define exactly how the individual assets of both communities will be handled by the committee for what they will be spent, what should be paid from what, for which thing can funds be spent from this pot or the other pot. And so we've been working on this whole thing since a couple of weeks now, also here in the meeting, discussing how would be the best way. And I think JD did a nice job now in fixing these things together over the I think last 2 weeks. Um, I made some comments. So basically, the whole thing starts a little bit with an introduction again, the reasoning, why we believe it's a good way of putting the funds of the IOTA community also into the hands of the grant committee, and then that we actually want to bound these things together and also include some new things like purpose-bound fund allocations. So we're thinking a little bit ahead of giving the Tangle DAO LLC in Marshall Islands once it finally is set up, JD. I don't know how far the government is,
Um,
still not.
Just waiting on my DAO. They said that recently, long story short, recently the last approver that sort of reviews all the paperwork,
Yeah.
they've now decided to make some they're where they were. I can't remember. There's a certain word for it, but
Mhm.
basically when a DAO is really holding like financial assets, they have a financial asset designation. They need approval by the governmental bank.
Yeah.
And this is holding up many. And I said, well, is that going to hold up ours? And he said he doesn't think so.
Yeah.
And I honestly mentioned to him, I said, look, if we don't get this by the 15th, we can't wait forever. Like we might need to start looking at other options.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a discussion that maybe we'll have all together come the 15th. So we'll see.
Fantastic. Okay. I'll just wait with the
Yeah.
bad news until they are there. If not, we just assume everything will be fine soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point we'll have some entity somewhere. There's no doubt
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I think then you start with some definitions, which is a real good thing. I think we didn't have this in the old specification, so we have a lot of terms here that are sometimes complex and complicated to understand. Many things sound very similar, but it's good to have this all defined. I did add some here. This is, yeah, some small comments here. This is the purpose-bound or purpose-bound allocation. Maybe I just read it through because this is kind of a new term. So it means that the
Hmm.
community may decide to form new DAOs or support funding arrangements above and beyond the Tangle Community Treasury Grant Committee. This was my comment here. Um, because it's basically currently only doing grant work, but there could be additional things set up under the Tangle DAO LLC that may not involve grants giving activities. Yeah. So some decisions may require a legal entity to sign contracts, issue funding, or other unknown reasons. Such a decision by the community would only be completed through a community governance vote, upon which the IOTA and Shimmer community funds would be transferred to the Tangle DAO LLC. These funds would be transferred with a specific purpose bound to such funds, such as managing a treasury through the committee-led program. However, it can be any legal purpose bound by the communities. The committee which manages the Tangle DAO LLC shall govern the assets allocated by the community only for the purpose bound by the governance vote. So that's a cool thing, because this means let's say the community wants to set up a donation program to help children in Uganda, whatever, with their treasury money. Free to do that, make a vote if the community decides, yeah. But for all these kind of things, you would need a legal entity that basically handles these things. Yeah, so there would then be a purpose-bound allocation of, I don't know, 5 million Shimmer tokens to the Tangledao LLC with the purpose of, okay, find great charitable organizations in Uganda and give them 1 million token for the next 6 months. Something like this is possible as the LLC. It would be a non-profit thing still, but it wouldn't fall under the current specification of being a grant committee. For this, it would need a new specification that would need to be part of the vote where the community exactly decides how these funds should be handled. But the good thing would be that the Tangledao LLC can offer a legal protection and a legal entity to do such things in a regulated way. Yeah, and that's the good part on this kind of addition. So basically, whatever the community would like to do, spend funds on, get into contracts with anyone or anything about anything, if it's a purpose-bound governance vote that decides this should be done, the Tangle DAO LLC could fulfill this purpose on behalf of the community. And I think that's a good part. JD explains it a little bit lower, but for the definition of this wording, I think that's pretty good. What else? No, I have just some small comments here on nothing essential. Define what the Shimmer community is, define what the Shimmer community treasury is. The Tangle community treasury is basically then including assets of both communities, so Shimmer and IOTA, or anything else that would come under the hands of the Tangle DAO LLC, and the Tangle Community Treasury Grant Committee, which is the current committee specifically set up to give out grants from the Tangle Community Treasury. But there could be potentially other committees with other purposes, with other members set up or whatever. This would then be just other name XY committee under the LLC. Yeah, and the Tangle DAO LLC, the legal entity formed in the Republic of Marshall Islands that offers liability protection to the Tangle Community Treasury Grant Committee and its community. Yes. Once it is set up. Okay, then we have the mission. So, and these are a little bit the small changes that we have to apply before, because the old specification was always only talking about Shimmer. And here, basically, we added Shimmer and IOTA. Yeah, so kind of everything stays the same. Most of the time, we just add IOTA as a second network, second community, second token to the things that we already have in place. This is a good part because this is suggested only for the interim so that the two treasuries can align after the current committee members have finished their term. So as we assume that the current term of the committee lasts until end of March next year, let's assume the IOTA treasury will be available before this time. And so there will be new assets going into the grant committee from the IOTA community. There will, of course, be a governance vote for that. Basically says, okay, put X amount of IOTA tokens into the hands of the current grant committee and let them give out grants in the name of the IOTA community. But then this will be only something like I don't know, a couple of months, and wouldn't be a full term. So anyway, in next year in March, we would have to do a new vote for renewing the terms of the current existing Shimmer Grant Committee for another year, and then also renewing the IOTA Grant Committee and IOTA specification, then also for a year. Yeah, it's a little bit important that we fix this now and get it into the under the same umbrella, but we I think we all agree that we want, if possible, always keep things synchronized. Yeah, so that we don't have a vote for Shimmer stuff in March and then need to do an IOTA vote in August because we did start on different terms. So we have to, in the beginning, we have to put them all together and then start synchronized in March with votes for both networks, both communities on setting up the new committee structure.
Yeah, and part of it is the the LLC essentially can be an umbrella for other DAOs, anything that comes in the future. However, because it will have both communities, essentially both communities will have to vote each year to continue the LLC because it affects both of them. And so that would take a majority vote. Let's say one community wanted to close the LLC because they wanted to move from the Marshall Islands to, let's say, the British Virgin Islands. The IOTA community would vote that in parallel at the same time with the Shimmer community. To get a passing vote, we're going to need both communities to be in favor of that proposal. If the Shimmer community said, no, we like the Marshall Islands, we're going to stay here, then that vote would not pass because it doesn't have majority. However, then the IOTA community could just say, okay, we're going to go and do our own thing. They would then vote on that and no problem.
Yeah.
But it's has a little bit of complication, but I think that's to line up both communities voting each year. So if one decides to do something different, they can do that, move out. Or if both communities kind of talk and say, hey, let's I don't know, let's create a new website, and that's kind of technically the LLC's responsibility. So then they would vote, and if both are in favor, then boom, off it goes. So it's just to keep in parallel the two communities when they need to vote about really the LLC, because that's the only thing that affects both of them independently, together.
Yeah. And you make it really nice. You little bit down below. You clarified this a little bit more. This here I just left a comment. This was about what we talked before. So, but I understand now you have here the responsibilities for the specifically grant committee thing, and this would be more LLC responsibilities. I made some comments here, like this term of good standing is something that is, I don't know, it needs to be better
Yeah.
defined. It's not really kind of a legally defined term. Maybe just leave it out, or we find a better wording for that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just leave it out because basically these two
Yeah.
bullet points are
You
basically
main
to say that
yeah, you
the
maintain
lead,
operational legal status.
yeah,
Yeah.
and make sure basically no community votes. A
Yeah.
community can't vote for the LLC to do something illegally, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So the lead has to ensure that the LLC not only does something illegal, but also in its regular day-to-day operations that it maintains a legal status and never falls out of the nonprofit status as well.
Here I made a comment because I think this sentence it's problematic because here you say
Yeah.
legally approved by the Marshall Island authorities. But of course we won't submit a
Yeah.
proposal to Marshall Island governments to say, okay, can
No,
we
yeah,
do that? So this is something that
yeah.
needs to be done before. Basically, like I said, we
I
should,
just meant it to be like
yeah,
any community governance votes have to be legal by Marshall Islands terms, not
Yeah.
I would
get
I would
approved.
revert that to
Yeah.
say compliant with terms.
Oh,
Yes.
compliant. I like
Yeah.
it.
And I
Compliant.
left the
That's
comment down there because
yeah,
here
but
we
I mean we all get what you want, but the wording is not
you
very
can't
good.
you
Yeah.
can't
Just
write it. You
rephrase it
can't
and
write
it's
it
fine.
like this.
I just
Yeah.
did some of this yesterday, so it was just a rough
Yeah, yeah.
draft. So
Cool. I made a
Yeah,
comment
yeah.
here because
I
I
mean
would
that's what we are in here.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would actually say that this is something that we actually have to put into the governance framework then, because this would be actually the job of the in a proposal process already to say, okay, sorry, but this is going against law in Marshall Islands. We can't put this proposal forward even in phase one because it is definitely not possible to do that. So it doesn't make sense to even allow it.
Yeah.
So this is then something, like I said, I made a comment here, we should get this into the proposal process, that
Mhm.
proposals that touch the legal things of the Tangle DAO LLC need to potentially be approved or checked by if they would be in conflict with any regulations there. And if they're in
Mhm.
conflict, then they won't even be put forward because it doesn't make sense to vote on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is a point we have to put into the other framework for putting up the proposals.
Mhm.
This is just wording. It's all invoices, the legal
So the
documents.
invoicing, I actually took the invoices out. I'm curious as your thoughts, like because we're doing um on-chain payments, there's always a record.
Yeah.
And it just the invoicing, some people don't know how to do the invoicing, some people have different types of doing invoicing. And I don't see the need for invoicing. It makes it much more efficient because then we don't have to keep the records as well. But of course, everything in here is always every single thing is recorded in a public ledger, which is,
I think
on chain.
the problem is if you would ask our finance Abteilung, they would say never do anything without an invoice. It's an LLC, it's a company. There might be even legal regulations that you have to have invoices for everything because one day there will be a tax audit or something like this. So, and they won't look on chain what's going on there. So
All right. Maybe
usually,
I'll
usually for companies and for legal entities, you need to have this. I know it's annoying,
yeah.
but you likely will have to have this invoicing going on. But this is something check with Paolo. If Marshall Islands says it's easy going, we don't need invoices, then you can skip it. But yeah, better to clarify. I know it's annoying, and most people have really trouble with it if you're not used to do this. But yeah.
Mm. Yeah, or I can make up a
Mm.
invoice template for
Or
people
yeah,
too.
maybe an easy template for people that have never done it. Something that would just basically work. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
So you maintain the treasury website, you ensure that all committee members are properly tracked. This is all cool. This is all a little bit in more detail than we had it in the old framework, speaking about exactly the responsibilities of everything being public and tracked and kept well. I think that's really good. Um, then we come to things that have been part of the old framework already. The little separation, the grants, and the counting between IOTA and Shimmer. This is important because we still, even if the same people operate both grant committees, it needs to be. It's really important, I think, that the funds are not commingled between
Mm.
the purposes. That's something we have to ensure for both communities, that nobody can say, hey, look, they paid this project that is only building on IOTA, but they paid it from our Shimmer tokens. Nobody asked us about that. Something like this is, yeah, a good accounting and a good public record of exactly which grant has been paid from which treasury and from which tokens and from which community. This is the best way to go forward here. Yeah. This is all mostly the same. Here is also important that also the invoicing for the reviewers should be handled depending on for which community they do their job. Yeah, so if they work on a proposal for the IOTA grant program, they invoice this to the IOTA, or they definitely need to separate the costs on their invoices on the how many hours they did work for on each grant. Yeah, and I mean, still there could be grants that touch both communities, like a marketing thing or things like this. Okay, then maybe it's something that can be decided to be shared 50-50, or whichever treasury has more in it. But I think the majority of grants can still be separated between the two networks. Or in case it's some tooling or something, then in the end it works. It will also work on IOTA, so then it can maybe paid from the IOTA tokens instead of the Shimmer tokens, something like this. I think we can leave this a little bit to the judgment of the lead. If there are things where it's not super 100% clear or that benefit both networks, then maybe take it from the larger pot, something like this. Yeah, that's all part of what the lead is responsible to do. I think this is really good and very well in detailed how you structure this here. Did I have any comments here? No. Then I have something. Yeah, then this is an interesting part. The lead will have 30 days of paid vacation, which I definitely think a lead deserves vacation. So you shouldn't work 365 days a year. My question would be, does it need to be a paid vacation? First of all, because it might be a legal problem because it is actually a service provider contract. So you're kind of a freelancer, but I don't know if it could then be seen as a hidden employment contract. That's very often done. So it could be illegal. And
That's a
and
good
then
point.
and then the other point is usually I mean not super, but usually contractors don't have holiday, don't have paid leave, don't have sick days or things like this. That's all basically responsibility and covered in the compensation that they get. I mean, for me it's the same. I don't have holidays. I don't get paid if I don't work. That's the thing. So I'm not sure. I think we need to get some opinions on that. Same here with the paid national holidays. This would be the same thing of mimicking an employment contract under a service provider agreement, which I think in Germany or like also maybe in the US would be seen as as a hidden employment covered under a service provider agreement, which could get us in legal troubles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. No, that makes sense.
yeah.
Let me I'll pass it by
Best check,
Paulo.
check with Paolo what he thinks. If this is something possible even, or if he says, that might be risky, if a tax or a government, if there's coming an audit or something like this, then there would be a question, okay, why didn't you just make a real employment contract? Why did you do the service provider thing when you want to save some taxes here or there? I don't know. It just sounds like an unusual practice to put it in this
Sure.
if it's not a real employment contract.
Sure.
Yeah. I know the lead deserves it, but basically, I mean, that's the cool thing on freelance kind of thing. If you don't want to work, you don't want to work. You just you also don't get paid. That's
Yep.
but
Yep. Yep. All right.
yeah. Then we have the responsibilities of the grant reviewers. So we're going to have two different multisig wallets. One with IOTA, and I think you have it somewhere. You have it here on the respective networks. I don't know. I saw it. So you added that.
Mhm.
This is most of the thing is the same as we had before, yeah. There's no
Mhm.
big changes, only again that they have to put their hours up for the respective network where they're coming from, and they can't add up more than 10 hours per week. So if they do 8 for reviewing grants for IOTA, then they just can only do 2 more for Shimmer in that time frame. Sick leave and so on. This is all. I think this also is all the same as we had before, I think. Then, yeah, this is a good and important point. Yeah, so this is what we also spoken about before. The community will approve the, maybe this should say the communities will approve the
Mhm.
grant committee through a governance vote annually for 12 months. The term will start on the day when the Firefly vote phase 3 results are published. I think I left a comment there. To continue the Tangle-DAO LLC and the Tangle Community Treasury and the chosen committee members each year before the end of the approval period shall be made by a community governance vote. Here maybe also write the communities will decide annually to continue or end the Tangle Treasury Grant Committee through a blah blah blah. Must be initiated minimum 6 weeks before. I think we spoke about that last week also, because with 6 weeks we would have enough time for phase 1, some discussions 2 or 3 weeks, phase 2, which is a week, and then phase 3, which is another 2 weeks with a couple of days in between for preparation. So 6 weeks we should be able to get a result before the term ends, so that if the community decides, yeah, let's continue, just everything stays, and we are not getting into some kind of legal gray zone where basically no new committee has been established already. But yeah, that's a bit of a thing. Maybe 6 weeks minimum. Yeah. Here also, the Shimmer communities, Shimmer and IOTA will decide annually to continue or end the Tangle-DAO LLC only with, you write a majority vote. I would always write with independent held majority votes, because like we said, both communities will need to have independent votes on their independent networks to do a binding decision that influences the whole LLC thing. Yeah, but this is just some wording thing. In general, this is all fine. Here I got a question. Okay, so let's go. The Shimmer and IOTA communities will decide annually to continue to end the Tangle-DAO LLC. Only with a majority vote between the two communities can a Tangle-DAO LLC be closed down or governance decisions be implemented. My question would be, what kind of governance decisions do you
Yeah.
mean here?
This might have been, I might have just been typing fast in that there probably should be another bullet point just to discuss that aside from closing down the LLC, any sort of governance decision involving the LLC that affects both communities
Yeah.
and both communities need to conduct need to reach majority.
Okay, because here then you write, if both communities do not vote to favor of a change, then the proposal. I think this is what you meant. Maybe I left a comment there, so you can maybe just reword it.
I'll clean it up.
Yeah. Also here, communities. Maybe this is something, because this is if a community decides not to continue the Kangle Community Treasury Grant Committee or the program, blah, 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 will gracefully shut down, transfer all assets. Now here you do it with a specific community wants to discontinue the committee management. It can do so through its community governance vote. Yeah, so a single community, Shimmer or IOTA, could close down its grant program, and still the LLC and the other committee and grant program would just continue to operate if they have no vote to shut it down. That fits. So the legal obligations, documentation, signed forms, everything, taxes paid, no legal obligations remain with the Tangle DAO LLC. Diddle. Yeah, here is something that is maybe something we have to figure out. You say the Tangle Community Treasury and or Tangle DAO LLC shall meet any legal bound contractual obligations, and any approved grants shall be funded by the Tangle DAO LLC or Tangle Community Treasury assets. So here we
Yeah, I'll just
say,
separate.
so here we
I'll
say we
just
have
separate.
two different pools of which could be theoretically. I mean, there could be or there could be like purpose-bound things that go to the Tangle DAO LLC, and then you have the
Right.
grant program, which is operated by the Treasury Committee. But because here you say it's about approved grants, and grants should only
Yeah.
be paid from the Tangle Community Treasury. This is what I left the comment here. So maybe exclude this Tangle DAO LLC or word it a little bit different.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to combine the two, but I'll separate it to where
Mm,
basically that the Tangled LLC meets all its legal bound obligations
yeah.
and the treasuries, if they have approved grants outstanding payments, they need to
Yeah.
follow those to
Needs
completion before they
needs
shut
to
down.
come from this wallet, but because otherwise it would say that you can use
Yeah.
Tangle DAO
it's
LLC assets to give out grants, which in the moment is so, but in the future might not be the case if there are different other things set up under the LLC. Yeah.
Mhm.
Shall secure all the operational costs, bank account, shalalala. This is all cool. Votes to continue. Diddle. Smooth transition with the new or elected committee members. Yep. The community may replace members whenever they want. This is also nicely. I think you added some good terms, but it's basically most of what we already had here. Yeah, so that people can leave for personal reasons, depending on the terms of their contract. And that, of course, the community can decide to kick out. And also, if there is a direct and immediate violation of terms, the lead can basically kick out, or not kick out, but refuse grant reviewers access to further things belonging to the treasury. So if somebody is really catched up, I don't know, breaking NDAs or things like this, or whatever, taking bribes, the lead will immediately act, and then this would be something that can be brought up for the community that this person will get removed. Here, I think this was left from the old one. I think we don't have any employment contract, so maybe we can remove this. The committee members' requirements, I think the rest is all as we had it. The only thing is kind of having the separate accounting for which they are working. Leggianano is still in case. The selection process. So here, did you do already the two different documents?
No, not yet. I
These are
just
just placeholders.
put it as a
Yeah.
holding place. Yeah.
Yeah. We will have to do this. I mean, yeah, it's basically just a little bit different wording, but we have this process that we had to select the current committee members. We called it, I think, Shimmer committee election, blah, blah, blah. I'll just reword it and put up a version for IOTA and a version for Shimmer, or maybe just combine it into one or something like this. I'll have to look through exactly how it's written, because it was kind of just like a thing that we did for this first thing, but I think it worked actually pretty good with the nomination, with the questions. I wouldn't see a big reason to change the process of the selection thing, so we maybe just keep it until somebody complains about it. Guiding principles. This is mostly the same that we had before, or did you add did we change anything?
The only thing I changed was I added Shimmer or IOTA in
Shimmer or
number one.
IOTA.
Everything
Yeah,
to me was exactly the same.
yeah. I also think that's it. Funding priorities. And so we have, so here we separate between Shimmer Community Treasury and IOTA Community Treasury for the funding priorities. Yeah, this is something like I said, I think like so. I know it's you wanted to have this kind of like, okay, the IOTA Foundation sets forth the vision and direction of the IOTA network, which we currently do, but I wouldn't bound the community to always follow this. I mean, in my opinion, as an IF employee, of course, cool. Yeah, just always follow what we do. But I don't think it's necessary to put it here. So I even think it could be that the community decides, okay, even if the IOTA Foundation has sets out the vision that IOTA should be this or exactly like this, but maybe we want to have it a little bit different, or we as community want evolve it into something more or in a little bit different direction in the moment. So this is basically just something that could hinder you to fund specific
Mm,
things, even if there is a big voice or a big move or uh, a big feeling in the community that it would be a good thing to do like that. Yeah. And likely the IOTA Foundation moves really slow. So my suggestion would basically to not mention this here and
mm,
keep it
a
open
good.
to whatever comes up basically. Yeah. Of
Okay.
course, because we have then also the guiding principles. So of course, if anybody submits proposals that are completely stupid or against the law or racist or things like this, I think we have covered the most of the bad things. This is something
Mhm.
I think maybe just let the community do what they want,
Mm,
independent of the IOTA Foundation.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think that this is going to get killed in phase one, or maybe even prior to phase one, when the governance moderators just say, hey, this is
Yes.
not in favor of our framework, and then we are going to reject them and tell the user it.
Yeah.
We've also received quite some people who were confused and posted a proposal and what was actually supposed to be a reply to something.
Mm, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just NFT farmers on Sealy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, but it hasn't happened in the last days. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'd have to take action on that because it's a little spammy. And I don't want to explain everybody in DM why I deleted your post that just says or
Yes.
something.
Okay, and now then we come to target areas for grant funding. And this would be basically for the IOTA treasury. Here is still written Shimmer, but you can just change it. Um,
Mm,
um, and this is a basic, I think this was from my side of the proposal, because I mean, yeah, clearly IOTA will have much more to focus on industry adoption, supply chain, things like this, big financial government things. Um, I think it will make sense also to tailor the grant program for IOTA a little bit more on the purpose what IOTA is meant to be, and have Shimmer doing more of the Degen DeFi stuff. Yeah, of course there will be DeFi on IOTA, but I basically, and I think we all think that um, there will also, especially big industrial adoption use cases, will happen on IOTA and likely not on Shimmer. And so if there would be some funding required for research, for whatever, so bringing some of the big industrial players on board, it might be beneficial for the grant committee to have a little bit a target area that includes things like this. Yeah. And so this is basically, okay, IOTA, a little bit more industrial adoption, supply chain, identity, yeah, things like this. And Shimmer down there is more for DeFi gaming, other applications that are more in the Web3 direction, let's say it like this. The rest, I think, is completely the same of both target areas. Yeah, just the one IOTA, the other one is more focused on specifically Shimmer. But like I said, if there is some stuff like open source software and tooling, if it's not specifically targeted to something that only exists on Shimmer, I think it could always be funded also through the IOTA treasury, because whatever comes into Shimmer will anyway go into IOTA. So if there's tooling or software development on protocol level happening, then and the IOTA treasury is maybe 10 times bigger, or the funds are 10 times more than what is in Shimmer, uh, then the committee can decide to fund such things from the IOTA. And if it's the other way around, it could also be in the other way around, yeah. Okay. Approval process. I think this is completely the same as before, just for both IOTA and Shimmer community funds. It's the same tiers. Or did
And then we just took out the regular and low. So rather than having
Yeah, and we
two different tiers
removed
of
yeah
market
yeah
cap,
re
just makes it
we
easy to
removed this
understand.
whole thing that if Shimmer has a low market cap, the funds the available tiers funds from the tier would be only the half. I think it's was overly complex and overly secure. Makes sense that the committee is then just if the market cap of Shimmer would be really, really crashing down, of course the committee would be more careful and even more restrictive in giving out grants if the value is so low. And I think you do a really good job in all this already. Yeah, keeping a little bit the balance, yeah, trying to not spend too much funds if we are still on this little bit lower market cap. It works very well without having these two different tiers for bound to market capitalization. The rest seems all the same. Application and scoring process. So this is, I say, this is the new one that Goblin and you guys in the committee created. You put it
Yep.
already here. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what the community says about it. But I think this is a great improvement to what we had before. Still kind of similar system with the points and the rating, but more tailored on what we need. So it's great that we have it, and we should implement it like this. This is all the same, I think. Yeah, the scoring points. Delete grant transparency. Yeah, and then we come to
The only
the
thing I didn't
Mhm.
include yet, kind of at that, is somewhere because so I have checked with Paulo and I think it should be different from the investing side, but you know, I think the committee should have the ability to just be flexible in, can accept either, let's say, a project's token, potentially could hold equity,
Yeah.
um, whatever, but as long as it does never affects the nonprofit status. So I need to put something just
Yeah.
to allow a
Yeah.
little bit of flexibility there,
Yeah.
rather than the only thing that a project could offer is just
Is
a percentage of their
token.
tokens.
Yeah. They could also offer other things. I mean, if it's an NFT project, maybe they give you half of the collection or things like this. I mean, it's all
Right.
possible, and
Exactly.
it's not a token, but it's still something of value, of measurable
Mm-hmm.
value. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it needs to keep the non-profit status of the thing in place.
Right.
Yeah, and then this is the point about making it possible for the grant committee and the treasury to also engage in a role of a kind of using idle funds for something useful. Instead of starting a year with a big treasury and, of course, giving out grants step by step, so the treasury will get smaller, but there's especially in the beginning, a large amount of funds sitting around doing nothing. So the idea I think behind this is put them to good use in, of course, very regulated and risk reduced things, but especially for providing liquidity in DeFi and stuff like this. Um, it could be a good way of supporting the ecosystem because we need liquidity, and the treasury funds are a nice, good chunk of money that is available but not used as long as it is not given out as grants. So the ability for the grant committee to make some of those decisions should be there. Um, of course, regulated, and this is why this needs to be part of the specification here, so that you guys can just go on and YOLO into the next
Yeah.
1,500 API pool that is set up on whatever XY new DEX that pops up out of nowhere. That shouldn't be the case. Just made here the comment. You wrote a really good explanation and basically motivation why you think and you want to do this. I just think it shouldn't be part of the specification here. This
Sure.
should be
Sure.
part of the proposal when we submit it. It's a great way of describing it, and it basically is very convincing and explains to the users why this should be part of it. But in the end, it doesn't regulate anything or specify how things are
Right.
done, so it doesn't need to be part of the specification here. Basically, the specification starts here with investing responsibilities. Um, you propose that the IOTA committee shall manage a third of its year's allocated assets through investing activities. So basically, if you get $1 million for a year, you are able to take 333,000 and put them into some investment work, and the rest in grants. And then have you I mean, have you put it somewhere that basically once the grant pot comes to an end, of course, this investment would then need to be pulled out and also used and give out as grants in the end. Yeah, but
Yeah. I
uh,
think I put somewhere that they can only be done as a short-term investing, and that they
mm,
need to be used for grant funding by the end of the year.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
you can't lock it up for 3 years in some kind of whatever pool. Um, that doesn't make sense. So it should be easily retrievable in the case that it's needed
right.
to give out important grants. Yeah, yeah,
Generated.
are allowed legally. So the investing decision must be completed majority vote.
Maybe
Yeah,
maybe one question regarding this.
yeah.
Like, uh, would the treasury be limited to just investing, for example, the portion of stablecoins inside the IOTA or Shimmer ecosystem, or would it also be open to invest, um, yeah, for example, on Ethereum because it has a much more liquid market, most probably at any point in time, um, at least in
I
the
I un-
foreseeable future.
I understand, Richard. What, of course, currently it's a more it's a nicer market there, but we
Yeah.
want to have the stuff happening in our ecosystem. If we can't
Yeah.
get this done, there's a couple of percent earning from somewhere else, because then we are supporting others and we are not supporting ourselves. And I think
Yeah.
that wouldn't resonate good with the community. Yeah. So
I like.
taking our money and giving it to some other ecosystem is likely not something that people will like.
I like the
Mhm.
idea of being
But
a.
the thing is, like, 1 second, please. The thing is that if we go the route of, okay, basically the thing is, in Latin you would say pecunia non olet, and the thing is that if you basically do stuff like stablecoin farming or stuff like that, then you should always go for the risk-adjusted yield, or the highest risk-adjusted yield. especially now that government bonds are coming on chain, like US treasuries are coming on chain on Ethereum. Which is probably like the safest asset class in the universe. Like traditional banker would agree with that. Any rating agency and whatever, it makes it actually really, really simple to invest in those kinds of assets. And this is, I'm not sure, like when Shimmer or IOTA will be there, that you can actually tap into this kind of market.
JD.
So these specifications are just for the committees. Now, again, the Tangle LLC can have multiple DAOs, so I think I see the benefits of that if we're looking strictly as investment into increase the funds, which of course could go back into supporting the community. However, I think for these, it's good because these treasuries are specifically used for the community to keep it inside. However, if let's say the community did a proposal and said, "Hey, let's create a DAO under the Tangle LLC just to earn income," like with the main treasury funds. But I think a lot more thought should be put into that and how it can be
actually,
invested outside.
I think you might also lose the non-profit status, because as soon as it has nothing to do with the ecosystem anymore, and you basically just, because then you can also say, okay, I just put the money in the bank, or I buy stock options on Wall Street with that. That's, I think, out of. I mean, of course, there could be a proposal, but I wouldn't put it under this. And even if it's safer there, and maybe if we don't see a safe way of doing it, then okay, we can't do it. Well, we have to make sure that we get the stable coins
Hold on,
in
hold on.
our
Edward,
Edward
you-
wasn't this mute.
Yeah, I'm gonna
There you go.
yeah. So all we have to
Very
make
sorry.
all we have to make sure that we get these super safe options into our ecosystem. And if it's not possible, then it's just not possible. I personally would never take our community funds and put them into another ecosystem. I know that's kind of maybe not the best option and not the safest option, but I wouldn't support other ecosystems with our funds. I just wouldn't do it. But that's just my personal opinion. Yeah, I would rather stay poor than giving something to the others, because this makes them bigger and us smaller, and that's not the purpose of growing our ecosystem. Yeah.
So by all means, we want to move in this. I mean, I think we should move in this direction to have a self-fulfilling treasury. We just need to do it in certain steps. So I think for something like that, it would need its own framework and specification in which defines how that committee can invest outside the ecosystem.
Basically, you would set up a for-profit DAO for that, for-profit LLC, a really VC or a really investment DAO, basically and with this, then you can go and do all the crazy things you like, and of course be profitable, I think.
And I've already talked with Paulo. Like, there's abilities to do subsidiaries under the main LLC, and with this aspect of short-term kind of investment, as long as we take all the profits back, support project funding, then we still maintain our LLC or our nonprofit status. So, I mean, and we might be able to do that. We might be able to have a subsidiary that is nonprofit that makes profit as long as it gives it back to the Tangle. But I think it's we want to take it slow in that sense. So I think the first step is conduct for-profit activities within the ecosystem, supporting the ecosystem, maintaining nonprofit, and then slowly look at the next evolution of that.
I definitely think if such ideas come up, there needs to be a community though, a community vote about it. Yeah, if the community says, yeah, let's do it, just put it in Curve and be happy farming stablecoins. Yep. But of course, this needs to be properly prepared, explained, and really, really agreed on by the whole community that their funds will be moved into other ecosystems.
Yeah, but yes, I completely agree with that statement. Only I want to emphasize that it's not necessarily even needed to put it on Curve. I mean, this is the go-to way. But a few days ago, actually, like a joint venture of like BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, whatever, called Under Finance tokenized US bonds on chain, basically. So if you're willing to do like institutional KYC, you're able to put your dollars there and get basically tokenized, short-term treasuries, which even hedges away kind of the risk associated with Curve. And I mean, like also from a profit perspective, like a ecosystem, like nobody would go to somebody and say, "Oh, you bought U.S. government bonds that are like short term for like 2 years." This is a very, very high risk operation.
Of course not. Of
And
course not. Yes.
completely for
Yeah,
But
but I will say this though. I will say this. Everyone said Celsius was low risk because it was the most and it had the most supportive VC, large billion-dollar backing. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying we can try to assess risk, but it's still crypto at the end of the day. So I think we want to move in that direction for sure, but it also brings up a whole other aspect of then how do we assess the risk? And that's kind of a question later down, but and what kind of specialists in the committee? Like I think, and when I talk about people, when I talk about that, I would like the Treasury Committee to be a VC within the own ecosystem. I always say, like, when it comes to DeFi, I go to you and Cowie because you guys are the experts. But I think also if we were going to go broader and bigger scale, I think we need some legit. I think it would be good to have some legit full-time, like 10-year financial advisors in a sense, and if let's say our treasuries go up to 50 million, 100 million in market cap because the tokens go up in appreciation, we've got money to have a financial advisor, from an actual legit company that then the committee and the community can make those decisions together. So I mean, I totally agree that's where we want to go. I just think we need to do it in steps. Going quickly sometimes
and
can be a struggle.
and I mean, and this is maybe just my personal opinion. Even if it's the safest thing on earth, we should do crypto things, and we shouldn't do traditional banking government stuff because this is the mess that we are actually going against all the time. And if we put all our profits and all our crypto and everything what we stand for into the hand of the New York bankers and the U.S. government, what are we doing here then? Yeah, so then we can just go back to Volksbank and talk to our bank guy, and then we don't need crypto if we go this route. That's just my personal thing. I know there's different. So
I actually completely agree with you, but the thing is, like, it's also not like from my point of view. If I were running it as a personal treasury, I would probably go all in crypto and long and do like some very, very degen stuff. But
in the end,
if you go,
in the end, it should be. And if there's no safe way of investing, then don't invest and give out grants. I mean, if it's for 8%, doing all this hustle, then just basically do what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a grant program. If there is no super safe investment available at the moment, better invest in grants to create those opportunities for the future than running around all over the world and trying to get 3% here and 5% there with all kind of, it seems to be I mean, if it's about 50% yield, super safe from US Treasuries, yeah, might be interesting. But for, I don't know what we get, 4 or 5%, just better give it into the ecosystem or do some, I don't know. But that's, like I said, my thing. Don't think like this as
Mm.
being the community bank. Yeah. Anyway, I think there's yeah.
One question I have is, I just threw out the percentages just because I didn't, and again, thinking like to not risk the whole treasury in case, a debacle or in what sense. So I put the 33% out there for IOTA just to be a little bit more risk adverse than with the Shimmer. I don't know, what are people's thoughts on that?
From my first reading, I thought, yeah, basically makes sense. Have a little bit more secure thing there. I think maybe this could be handled a little bit flexible. Maybe also
Okay.
maybe you could depend it a bit on the dollar value that you have at the start of the year. Say, okay, this maybe you get 10 Ti. We never know how much it will be. Is it 1 million
True.
or it's 20 million? Then you could, yeah, but it's difficult to formulate it here in the specification.
We could think about it, or
Yeah,
just state. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe think
Maybe
about
think
it.
about it, or maybe go with it. Yeah. One point I had here. Any approved committee investing activity must be reviewed by the TangleDAO LLC representative before being actioned. I know what you mean, but this could be interpreted as, okay, whenever Richard decides, okay, it's now a good time to ape into another LP position on Shimmer, he would have to call Paolo before and get approval, and Paolo would charge for that. I think
Yeah.
you don't mean it like this, but it could
Yeah.
be interpreted like this, so it needs a little bit different wording here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like, how is it worded in the sense of like, hey,
Maybe
we
type,
invest in an LP
say
pool.
maybe a type of investment, which would be, okay, we want to invest in providing liquidity in automated market makers on the Shimmer EVM. Is this something that is legally okay with the LLC? You get a one-time approval, and then basically all LP activities in DEXs on the Shimmer EVM are okay from the governance side. And so if you put in some new assets or you take some out, you don't need to all the time, because he will be happy for writing a bill for every time you do that.
No, you're right. And I didn't, and I think I meant it like more.
Yeah.
Let's say we create a contract to write terms for someone. Maybe their liquidity, I mean, soon,
Yeah.
kind of like Soon Labs, but let's say a different one. Hey, our liquidity is tied up because it's locked for another 8 months. Can we take a loan, and then we'll have these terms in which we pay it back, and then that document. So maybe I'll change it to be more the lead has to ensure that it doesn't affect the nonprofit status, and if need be,
Maybe
have
there
it
could
reviewed
be
by
maybe there
legal
could be
counsel.
something like a checklist, something from Paolo. I say, okay, if those and those conditions are fulfilled, that is first of all something that is not illegal under the Marshall DAO LLC. Yeah, so this is something that you then have to make sure that the points on the checklist fit. If something is unclear, consult with Paolo to get an opinion. But otherwise, I just don't. I mean, he's a good guy, but he's
I
also
think we
not
should just
cheap. Yeah.
and leave it up to the program lead
Mm.
to know when to double check something or not.
Yeah.
Let's just do that.
Yeah. Assign a grant manager for each investing activity. That's a good point. The investing activities will be reviewed bi-weekly during the Treasury working meetings. Each investment must be done in in which or how it should support the growth of the ecosystem and affect the community in a positive way. So there we have already, I mean, if you send funds to Curve on ETH, then it doesn't really support the growth of the ecosystem. Later when you get the returns, yeah, but until then it's a little bit removing liquidity from the ecosystem. After time of liquidation of close of such investments, the community shall make such actions that do not negatively affect communities. Remember, yeah, this is something, and I also had something in mind. This negatively affect community members and the project. So what happens if there's a bug? Something's coming up, and you need to be quick to drain your position out of an LP, because otherwise you get wrecked. This, of course, if we are, I don't know, let's say we are 30% of the pool. If we pull our 30% out, the whole project is dead. Yeah, it's like, and everything will be liquidated. But if we don't pull it out, we are in the risk of getting wrecked ourselves. So in this case, you would even need to take action, even if it would negatively affect community members and the project, to protect the assets that are community owned. So this is why I think this is a bit of a difficult statement. I mean, nobody would in the end, I mean, you don't know if maybe potentially the project later would say, we thought you, because you have this part here in your thing, so we thought you would never take out your position so quickly. You crashed us, blah blah blah. You know, there can have some unnice consequences, such things. Maybe this is something I have to think about. Yeah.
I'll reword it to be more flexible and add something about protecting the treasury's funds.
In case of community funds are at risk, the primary objective is always to protect the assets of the treasury, blah blah blah, something like this.
Right.
Yeah, then profits generated from the investment activities shall be used to support the mission of the Tamil Community Treasury, which is to support. Yeah, so of course all the profits require or come back from such investments should go into new grants and following the mission of the grant committee. All investment activities shall be actively and transparently shown on the website and summarized with quarterly reports. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, actively and transparently is maybe, like I said, it wouldn't be necessary to. So if there's like really an active LP management or things like this, or going in and out of lending position and things, of course you won't need to track and display every single move that has been done. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do this kind of 3 times a day. You go into position, you go out, you buy, you sell. Potentially a very active fund manager or investment manager would or potentially could do this. So I think you don't need tracking all this, but of course you will need to say, okay, we are now deploying X amount of capital, or we have put X amount of capital on the side to provide liquidity in TangleSwap for this and this pools. It will be handled by grant manager or fund manager XY. Yeah, that would be nice and transparent. Maybe put the address that is acting, but you won't need to record every single transaction publicly or display it.
The only thing because if let's say something bad happened, all of a sudden, boom, the funds are gone.
Yeah.
And then we ask the grant manager, or sorry, the investing manager what happened, and he doesn't have any way to fully show it. But what I did with the liquidation process is I said something like along the lines like, if we liquidate on a centralized exchange, we have to show it like something like 72 hours after or some time limit, but not right at the moment, because then people potentially could front run and stuff like that. So liquidation, investing, especially in liquidity pools, will be done. I mean, people see it on chain, but that doesn't have to be publicized on the website or
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
ledger for some days or a week or something. But I think it shouldn't be that hard to just keep a log of what they do. Hey, sold X
I mean,
amount.
yeah, the log,
Here.
like you will have it in Explorer. If somebody wants to see
Yeah.
exactly what has happened, just click the link, put the link to the address on the Explorer, and you see every action that has happened.
Mm,
But you won't
right.
need to write an explanation. Okay, here we did put 12,000 Shimmer into this because of that and that and that. This is a lot of work for documenting it. I would basically just put the Explorer link there. People can live or every time see whenever any action has been taken. That should be transparent enough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Um, this is basically just. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
correct because
I
this was
need
only the IOTA committee, and then you have the Shimmer committee. You have
right,
the copy
right.
down there. I didn't see that.
So
Yeah.
I need to take the shimmer out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the thing about any investment activities shall be done so with a minimal and low risk analysis. And there comes my old engineering thinking and says, okay, um, a risk analysis, this is kind of a term. So there are different ways of doing a risk assessment. I think also in financial and in so the problem is you could ask, of course, which method was used to do this risk analysis or this risk assessment. Has the person that does the risk assessment, are they even qualified, trained, or certified in doing a risk assessment? Because there are some, in finance, there are some ISO and DIN standards and stuff like this. So this is something that could be used as a, uh, yeah, so it's something that I know, of course, it's important that we state it like this, but it could be something that could be used to say, okay, you haven't followed specific rules for risk assessment as stated in FCSE regulation, blah 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 blah. Like I know, like asset managers in hedge funds or in things, there are financial regulations in place. Usually, how exactly such risk analysis and also the communication of risk to the outside needs to be done. I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves into a position where somebody in the end could put a lawsuit up and says, okay, the treasury lost blah 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 $12 million here and there because they didn't follow proper risk assessment rules as laid out in whatever kind of thing there. So this is maybe something. Um, I think this needs just a very good formalizing so that we don't put ourselves into some kind of limbo on the legal side. Yeah.
Try to put some type of disclaimer or something.
Something
I
like
think
this.
like when the investment proposal is proposed, like the committee has to do an internal vote to reach majority, and somehow this should be recorded somewhere. I'm not sure
Yeah.
where, but I can easily come up with that. And then we'll have a summary of why do we think this is a good investment activity, how we've looked at the risks, and why we
Yeah.
consider this a low risk investment. And that way, then anyone in the community could say, "You're totally fucking wrong," blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But in this bullet, I'll put some disclaimer as in
Yeah. Under
no committee are
yes.
financially
Yeah, under the
certified.
current, yeah, with our
Blah blah
current
blah.
available informations and under best judgment of our capabilities, blah 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 blah, we came up
Yep.
with that this is currently seen as a low risk investment, and therefore we agree. Some maybe Paolo, or maybe there might be some legal some term or disclaimer that you can put on that protects the people a little bit, because I don't know exactly the regulations, but there might be some shit stuff in place in the US or something that you need to have a special certificate or a whatever degree in blah 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 MBA to or finance. I don't know. to make such things because you're investing funds of somebody else. So this is a little bit of thing we need to put some legal thoughts about to not mess up this thing later on. I mean, I don't think but it's just like, being aware of there might be some risk and having it checked out so that nobody is putting themselves onto the chair here. Yeah. Then the same thing for the Shimmer committee. I think it's just the exact copy, just for the Shimmer assets. And the complaint, this is the old one. Then we have the budget for 12 months operation. I think this is all clear. Here we have this was basically my idea, start with 10 Ti from the IOTA treasury. I think that's reasonable. I'm not even sure if this is spendable in the first year, which is okay. Then it could go over. And here we still have the.
We talked about adding that this 10 Ti would cover until March 2025.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is something you can add because then it doesn't matter when the IOTA tokens come available before March, they would be used from this point on throughout the next year until the next period of voting starts. So 1 year and whatever month before the IOTA tokens come into the hands of the grant committee would be for this 10 Ti. And then there would be in March 2025 a new election with a potential new budget decision on how much tokens should be used then. This is still the same for now because it's still the same budget. This is just some wording things. If committee members are chosen to manage both treasury funds, they will expense their hours separately between the two treasuries. Yes. The liquidation process, you had it written out somewhere. I would just put the link here, or it's somewhere. Yeah, it's in the GitHub. Okay, cool. This is also, I think, pretty nicely everything with the liquidation process. Shall be shared between the IOTA and the so like if there's some general costs like lawyers and things like this, it should be shared between the two treasuries. Yeah, you can take maybe 50-50 or something like this. And then you also put here that there would be an including of 50K USDC, UDT for unknown non-salary operation costs, because this is really something that we forgot in the last specification when we did it. We didn't account for any budget for ongoing running costs. Like now we had budget for basically for setting up, there will be some legal costs that will be covered, but there is no real setup for after. Once it's set up, there might be still more need for consultants, for technical experts, for legal reviews, for I don't know, creating a text report or stuff like this. So for this, there need to be some petty cash available that can be spent for things like this that are just like needed. Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to put it there. And if it's not used the 50K, just continue it for the next year. But it's good to have something at hand if some costs come up, and then before you have to, I don't know, not sure if you can use money from the grant committee. It should be written in the specification so it's clear that there is funds available for such things. Yeah. Yes, unspent assets will be carried over in the next legislative period. Yep.
So that will just be key because we'll have to vote on that, because if it's not carried over to the next year, let's just take the Soon tokens for
Yeah.
example. We got the Soon tokens at an average of 23 cents.
Mm.
It's, on Bitforex, the price is 40 cents. So if we send it back to the community treasury, we would have to pay taxes on those
Yeah.
profits, basically.
Yeah.
Because to maintain the nonprofit, any profits we make have to go back to grant funding.
Yeah.
Which, of course, would be, if we were to try to sell, $50,000 soon, it would just crash the market and crash the price. So, yeah, so that will just be something that we'll have to articulate to the community, that they understand what they're
Yes.
voting on and
It
implications.
would basically need to be put into the proposal for every year that, okay, if you vote on to continue the grant program, the assets that are currently still held are going to be continuously just stay in the possession of the grant committee as it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the legal entity thing.
Maybe one thing. Do we know whether or not there will be a frac swap fork on Shimmer or IOTA? Because it allows for basically T-WAMMing or T-WAPPing into out of and into such positions. So for example, what you can do is put up a limit order and you say, okay, sell this amount of tokens over, I don't know, 3 months or 48 hours or whatever, and this way you kind of get like a payment stream or like a liquidation stream of funds.
You're in the Touchpoint Discord, so if you haven't seen something popping up in the Touchpoint Discord, then I'm not sure. So from my personal knowledge, I haven't seen something about Frax currently. I just saw that we get a GMX fork. Yeah. That's fresh from you, but the Frax I personally haven't seen, but there might still be some hidden gems that are not going public or that I just haven't come to my attention. But yeah, it will evolve. Yeah, once we are live and we get a little bit attention, I'm sure projects will come. People have new ideas. Maybe somebody submits a proposal to build it. Then let's go for it. Yeah. Okay, legal entity stuff. I think this is basically what we had. Success matrix, changes. I think basically we got most of the things. Allowed community changes. Yeah, I left a comment there. Maybe JD just for you to watch. And governance forum, blah. I think we got it.
Cool.
Maybe we just leave it. Yeah.
I think I forgot 2 things from the lessons learned, but I'll go through this and clean it up.
Yeah.
Maybe get those last lessons learned, and I could probably do that by next week. And then should we then look to put it up in the governance forum for phase 1?
Yeah. Do you share? Did you share? No, you didn't share it yet in the. Or maybe once you went through that, we'll share it here in Discord. Let the group
that's a good
go through it again. If there's some more comments or questions, maybe something needs to be clarified or formulated easier for people to understand it. But then, yeah, we should move into. Yeah.
1 week's a bit ambitious, actually. Maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks.
I know.
Because then we still have to do the governance. We still have to do the governance documents, which is going to be separated between the IOTA and Shimmer.
Yeah.
And then I need to.
Oh, Nicholas, I'll have to. Yeah.
Okay. We will need to put the election process into sort of a GitHub documentation, which I can do too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to do the governance ones, is that right?
Yeah. Okay. I have it already. I mean, it's a huge, crazy, fucking huge document, but yeah, I have it already in Hack with not most, but I think I'm like 70% through it. The hardest part will be the table, the fucking HTML table. I will have to maybe I'll have to make this new, so that's not HTML anymore. I'll do a proper HackMD table out of it, but it's a huge table, so that's going to be some fizzling, but it will be worth having it. And
Okay.
yeah. Oh, but then yeah, we can slowly move into the right direction. Until then, I would say, if nobody has any questions, we are already pretty long in, and it's
I don't have a question, but another point.
Yeah.
And that's what I already raised in our internal group with archiving posts in the governance forum.
yeah. You mean
With what?
archiving or closing? Because I think
Both, actually, both.
yeah,
Yeah, the archiving. Didn't we have that in the governance?
we have it, but actually we have archiving. I think it's only for rejected proposals.
I thought it
Uh,
was in phase 1. If it doesn't go on to phase 2, it gets
Ah,
archived after
okay.
a certain amount of weeks.
No,
Potentially, yeah.
but the one post that's archived is the runoff with the growth committee.
Yeah.
But that was a phase 2.
Yeah, I think it was archived because it was declined. I think this was my thinking while I archived it. But so you would, we have to look how we defined it.
Yeah.
Basically, the only thing
I mean,
not.
Deep Sea, you wanted to check that.
Yeah.
I know. I'll check it. I'll be honest. It totally
Yeah.
slipped my mind.
I would just, if I just think about what if, let's say if we would now archive basically everything that we have there, will make our category things empty. So on the first
Yeah.
side, it would look like there hasn't been any proposals or any discussion, and we would have to lead the people to, okay, you want to see the past proposals, check the archive. We can do this. We can put a
So-
link or a mention up there, and yeah.
So my proposal would be that what we are going to archive are phase 1 proposals that were updated, so that have multiple versions.
Yeah.
So whenever a new version comes in, like the Shimmer, the grant committee, we have multiple up there.
Yeah.
Then we move the old one back, so because it's closed anyway, and
Yeah.
just link it in the new one.
Yeah.
So if
So-
anybody wants to see old versions, we can direct it to the archive because it's that stuff
Yeah.
that's definitely not going
That's
to be needed
actually
anymore.
good, and it's
But
also
for actually
confusing.
rejected post,
Mhm.
phase 2 stuff, I'm actually not sure. I think we should actually leave it there.
Yeah.
And only close it when the vote is over for
Yeah.
14
It's
days.
actually a
is
good
my
thing
suggestion.
because having these different versions is anyway going to be confusion, and so maybe it's pretty good thing to just put them in the archive so they're out of sight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say we put there anything that's fair, and maybe also posts that were like where the maybe also where the creators decided he wanted it gone or something
Yeah.
like that. I
Yeah.
don't
Or
know.
not
Yeah,
followed up anymore. Yeah.
on request.
Yeah.
Would also say.
So
That's a
I'm
good
looking
point.
at the wiki now, and it says, at least for phase 1, it says if the proposal does not have any engagement over a 30-day duration and does not have the minimum 50 likes, yes votes, it will be archived.
Okay.
And
Yeah, but I think we should adjust this a little because I would rather say we close it and then because I mean it's a classic thing on forums with old posts that suddenly get replies
New
and 99%
comments.
it's out of
Yeah. I
thing.
think it's a good
then
thing.
So
Closing it and still having it there. People can scroll down and read it, and they don't need to go to the archive. And archive is then only for outdated versions. Actually, sounds
actually
good.
outdated versions or stuff that was
Just shut down. Yeah.
shut down where owner said we're going to push it back or so
Yeah.
on request.
Phase 2
The
says
second
if
the
the
second
minimum vote if the minimum votes are not reached in a specific time, the phase 2 poll is marked declined and archived in the proposal archive category by a moderator. The proposal can be closed and archived at any time by written request of the proposal submitter to a governance forum moderator. So I guess it seems like you said, if it's active and was approved, it just stays there. And but if was not approved or passed, or the owner requests it, then we just put it in archive, right?
Yeah, I would say if it was declined, then I would say we leave it there as declined. Because I wouldn't just leave posts that were suggestible, but only where they were updated, that were like removed on request because like he got several critical comments and said, this is a bad idea, I want this down. Then we do it.
Yeah.
And the third thing, I thought you just gave me an idea, phase 2 posts that were declined due to a lack of votes.
This is good because this
So
will
where there wasn't any actual decision, but it was like there was no votes, not enough votes there.
Yeah. And then they failed basically. Yeah. This is Werner, can you just write it down and maybe post on the channel or something?
I'm going to write it down because we
Yeah.
have another problem, and that's the wait. The elections. Right. Because these posts are all still open. And in my opinion, we should close
Yeah, we should basically close them. Yeah, absolutely.
We close them down, and I would also create an archive category where we archive them before the next vote starts.
Yeah.
So it's the entire board is fresh again for.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Hey, write it down because then I will also add it to the protocol of the thing. And also, if there is some stuff to update for the framework, it's also good for me to have it there, and then I can update it for the framework because it's kind of like some of the moderator tasks and things like this. Best is to have it up to date.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I would say like anything that's not relevant should be archived.
Yeah. That's amazing, guys. Maybe here I'm getting super tired. Super late for me.
Yeah.
So I would. No problem, no problem. I'm all good. But okay, let's move the thing to next week Thursday again. Let's meet there. Let's see. I think JD, we maybe resolve the comments and then we'll put it up again here next week Thursday for going through again, and then we'll just put it public and see if there's some comments flowing in. People have some questions. We'll work on the other stuff that we wanted to get ready, and then we can slowly start to put the things into the governance forum for discussion. All right. Until then, my friendies, have a good one. Have a nice one. And see you next Thursday at 4 p.m. Same time, same place. Thanks everyone for joining, for your questions, for attendance, and yeah, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.